you have to know what is making up your salary. Is it 5 hours a week in marketing? Is it 10 hours a week in sales? You got to know where your $5,000 a month is coming from the business. So as the business grows and that budget increases, you can then decide, because now it's your decision, which seat do I want to step out of? And once you have that, you have now freedom. You're making the decision how to get your time back.
Guys, welcome to another episode. We're going to talk about building a business that works so that you don't work all the time. You know, we know that what we teach in Practical Wealth is there are 4 asset classes, right? When you look at wealthy people, business, real estate, paper, and commodities. But I find the fastest path to cash is business, but there's stuff missing. So I have Mr. Gary Harper. Gary is the CEO of Sharper Business Solutions and of the Rise Business Framework, right? So he's 11 years of executive experience at a Fortune 500 company. He's specialized in evaluating operational and expenses and driving efficiencies. And he's combined his expertise with business systems, and he has a passion for real estate investors. And the goal of this show is to give you a thought process to help you scale effectively. Okay. And so I'm going to say, so in 2000, and this is, I think, what framed this, Gary, I want to talk about a little bit. In 2013, you had a life-changing battle with Lyme disease. And I want you to tell me how that inspired you to do this. And now he travels around the country kind of teaching this platform and giving his experience. He's known as the difference maker. And he gives actionable solutions to complex challenges, equipping teams with actionable tools for success. His common sense approach and dedication to helping others have left a lasting impact on businesses nationwide. Gary Harper, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you for the great introduction, and thanks for the warm welcome. I appreciate being a part of this.
Yes, my pleasure. So tell them your kind of like your origin story, like you were bit by a radioactive spider, and you know, where'd that come from? Because I believe entrepreneurs are superheroes, and so we all have a backstory behind that. So tell us a little about that.
You know, Curtis, it's funny you say that, because like when I got bit by the tick, I was like, this really sucks. I got no superpower. Like I'd grown up watching all these Marvel movies and all these, you know, comics and reading them, and I was just like so excited about the fact that, you know, what's going to come from this, right? And the truth is, sometimes heroes show up in many different ways, and powers show up in many different ways. Not always in shooting, you know, strings out of your forearms or anything, but it definitely, you know, I think, you know, my superpower actually, I feel, comes from God. He empowered me with a lot of my my skills and traits, and I, you know, and he knew in that moment what was the rest of my life was going to look like, and so I didn't trust it, but I'm glad it happened to be nonetheless. My story kind of goes back a little further. 2000, I was about 16 years old. You know, high school wasn't the thing for me. So like I got in a lot of trouble in high school and ended up not graduating high school, got my GED, and mom and dad kicked me out. You know, you need to be a troublemaker or grow up, you know? So I moved to Indiana, right outside of Chicago, and got into real estate with my brother-in-law. He stuck me in a lot of these rental properties and once he was fix and flipping in Gary, Indiana and Hammond, Indiana. And my job was to keep them safe while we rehabbed them. So nobody stole the copper or anything out of them. So I did that early on until I was about 18, 19 years old. And then that led me into, you know, I got married and had 2 kids and started my journey in entrepreneurship at the same time of being in the corporate world. So I started owning my own rentals, but at the same time, I was building a career in Chicago. And a lot of the words I actually have behind me are from those years, and became an executive for a Fortune 500 company. But, you know, God had other plans for me. And I was same time of building real estate in 2004 to 2008. You know, I was climbing the corporate ladder. But, you know, like you said, around 2010, the world shifted, and I lost every investment property I had and ended up in a bankruptcy situation. But that next year, I got bit by a tick. I came out of Lyme disease, and I called that my year of Job. You know, if you study the Bible,
Yes.
Job lost it all. And I felt like that was my year. I lost my health, I lost my wealth, I lost my career, I lost everything I was building.
Wow.
And my life was being directed in a new way. So I had to find a new path. And God gave me my health back. But at the same time, I had told God that if he gave me my health back, I'd give my back to helping other people and living a life to helping other people. And what I'd learned all these years, I felt like entrepreneurs could benefit from. So I started a real estate company with my brother-in-law. I went to work with him, and we did about 300 deals a year till about 2016 in 5 states. And, it was interesting for me, like what translated or what went really well in corporate America and what we did very well, structure and organization and things like that, didn't translate properly down to entrepreneurship, and all these little fundamental pieces are missing when you start a business. And a lot of us just lack generalized training on how to build a business from scratch.
Right.
And I always tell people a business starts for 3 reasons, right? Number one, somebody has a passion,
right?
They have a passion to want to do something, whether it's a passion for the product or just a passion for freedom, or they want to make money, or they want to spend more time with their families. Like it's a passion for something, but the passion usually, leads to them finding a product. And so these are the 3 P's: first, passion; second, is product; and the third thing is they feel they can make profits, right? They can pay for their lifestyle with this entrepreneurship or this self-employment. And so they make the jump. They take that jump to where they think this is going to be. And I always say jump is another acronym: just unleash my potential. And they're like, I'm going to go after it, right? I'm going to get to my potential. But Harvard Business Review talks about there's 5 stages of business.
Okay.
And in the Harvard Business Review, that talks about what these 5 stages look like, from startup all the way to success. And we go through stage 1 when we're starting it up, stage 2, which is kind of that grinding stage. We all kind of live in this grinding stage for a while, and the business has to have us there.
Right.
3 is like that stability stage. It feels good. Things are working. All right. And we're making money. And then there's stage 4, which is kind of that, evolution or expansion stage. We start to expand. Sometimes we try to push to 10x or bigger. And then that 5th stage again, right? We call that success. We're reaching our purpose, why we started the business in the first place, And I think people decide like what stage they want to stay in.
Interesting. I miss one? Is it first step 1 is grinding? What is stage 2?
Actually, step 1 or stage 1 is startup.
Startup. Okay, sorry. Yep. Then grinding.
And stability.
Stability, got that.
Yep. Expansion and then success.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
And so people, I don't think they want to stay. So they probably get to, sometimes I think they never get out of grinding to reach stability.
It's true. That's very true. You remember Robert Kiyosaki's 4 quadrants? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I just showed somebody like 15 minutes ago. Yes.
And that's what they're talking about, right? You're the go from that employee to self-employed.
Yes, right. And most people go, they're S's, but they think, because I was like this, they think they're B's, but they're really self-employed. They own a job, right? They're S, or S could be Superman or Superwoman, where you're chief cook and bottle washer. And, it seems like, so the RISE framework is a bridge from S to B.
Yeah, it's a bridge really from employee to self-employed, self-employed all the way to B, and depending on which stage of business you're wanting to stay in, really, at the end of the day.
And I guess to I.
Yeah. Ultimately. Now we don't take traction, and scaling up and make big happen, and again and rise. We don't take it to I, right? We're not teaching investment strategies. But, we're getting to you where you're getting your time back. And that's ultimately what I is, right?
Yeah.
Is because business is, in self-employment, it's about exchanging time for money. And then that investor quadrants where you're exchanging money for money.
Okay.
Okay.
So how does the framework address balancing profit and purpose? Because a lot of times business owners are experiencing, just struggling with growth and being burnt out at the same time.
They are. It's funny, depending on what stage you're in. It's funny when I see businesses in stage 1 or stage 2, their common, cry is like, I want my time back.
Yeah.
And then if they don't build properly, they don't scale properly, then they get to expansion and they go, I want my money back. So
Right.
like, you got to be really careful here, because you could get your time back. You just got to pay for it when you're building a business. And so if you're not careful of how you pay for it or where you pay for it, you'll be wanting your money back at some point. You'll get to a point where your business isn't making enough money to support your lifestyle again. And
so when you say pay for it, do you mean hiring help or assistance, or
in a lot of different ways, right? Like whether it's vendors or whether it's systems or whether it's people, like multiple different ways we delegate. And when we delegate, we typically have to pay for that delegation.
Right.
And so, some of the most successful businesses in the world have very little employees. So, you can have systems. You don't have to always hire people. But
Right.
you got to pay for it.
And I think you have to, like when I hired my first assistant, I looked at, all right, what did they cost me? And I set aside enough money to cover their salary from my sale. I looked at it as an investment, right? So I'm gonna put X amount to cover this and see how much does this save me time or make me new money, right? And I think that and I don't think people, they just throw money at stuff, but they don't track the profitability thereof, and now you're just stuck with higher expenses and less money for you.
Yeah. I always tell people there are 4 types of KPIs in a business. Okay. The first KPI is the purpose indicator. So you always got to keep that in front of you. And that's what I call your filter, right? So every decision you're making in your business needs to go back to, will this help me achieve my purpose? So Chick-fil-A, for example, great example of a company that scaled properly, right? They started in 1946. They didn't reach $1 billion in revenue till 2001. 54 years of building properly before they went to expansion. And from 2000 to 2023, they grew from 1 billion to 23.5 billion.
Wow.
All while only having less than 3,000 stores. So like, you can do this, right? And you can do it the right way, but you have to always center things around purpose. And Chick-fil-A's purpose was, to honor God. And so that's why on their signs, it says closed on Sundays. It's to constantly remind them of their purpose, why they did it in the first place. So once we have that in play and we're making decisions based on it, now we go to the profit indicators of the organization, right? So what are we doing? What money are we trying to make? What do we need? And I think, Curtis, that's where a lot of entrepreneurs do it wrong. Now, I kind of want to park on this for a second, because I'll give you the other 2 KPIs real quick. There's the purpose indicator that creates profits, profit indicator that creates performance, right? The results. And then the daily process indicators, which are the tactical macros that we have to do every single day in order to create performance, to get us profits, and fulfill our purpose. We build down and we measure up.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah. And so if we stay focused on the daily, then we know that we'll get the results, and the results will lead to profits, and the profits will lead back to our purpose if we do it the right way. I lost 120 pounds in the last couple of years. And I did it the same way. Like, why do I want to lose weight? Purpose. What am I trying to gain? Health, right? So I'm trying to gain health, my blood work every 90 days. And then I'm like, well, what does performance look like? Well, the scale, how many steps I can walk, how many weights I can lift, that kind of thing. But then there's a daily macros that calls the process indicators that tell me whether or not I'm doing what I need to do every day, right? How much, protein did I eat? How many carbs did I eat? How many fats did I eat? How many steps did I take today? How much water and ounces did I drink today? Like, those are daily macros that lead to the scale, right? And more weights that lead to my gain and my profit, or my blood work, that lead me back to longevity and my purpose, So if you look at it in aspects of life, we do this kind of thing every day. I just trademarked the 4 types of KPIs that make up that system that create that success. And
I love that. Because it's relationships, it's diet, it's business, it's the same thing, because people are so, I want to do this, but all right, what do you do when you wake up tomorrow morning? So I haven't boiled it down to the daily activities. I always tell people your work ethics must match your dreams, but they haven't really figured out what are the little things that you need to do to make the big thing happen. So I think that's brilliant. So go down. So now we've framed them. Go there where you wanted to park for a second.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, and you're right. The tactical daily is where success happens.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're little things. They're easy things to do, but little things, easy things are also easy not to do.
Easy. Right. Easy not to
Right.
do. Right.
So, I mean, I know, trust me, like, bro, I messed up last night. You know, I know it's easy to make this decision not to eat it, and make the decision to eat something better. And I'm like, no, I still want that. So, you know, and so we forfeit that
pepperoni. Right.
Success.
Yep.
What's that?
I said I want this pizza with pepperoni on it. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I could have made a pizza with crust out of chicken, but I didn't, right? Like I got the regular stuff. So, but you know, I think we forfeit that long-term success for short-term pleasure. You know, and when it's like, man, it's just, I know this is the easy thing to do, but I just don't want to today. I just don't want to get up at 5 o'clock. I don't want to go to the gym, or I don't want to take time to sit in the office and discover or do what I got to do. And as an entrepreneur, you got to, right? Like the business, nobody's coming to save you. You've got to do this work.
Right.
And so this is where I was going to say, like, I think a lot of people, when they start a business, they make one of the biggest mistakes is when they're building out their company and they start to look at the passion, the product, and the profits. They don't layer over top of that the right resources. And here's what I mean by resources. And this is stage one of Rise. It's resources are time, money, and people.
Okay.
So it's like, as an entrepreneur, one of the very first things you got to look at is, where should I spend my time? Where am I going to get the highest ROI on my time? And I call it ROT. What's the return on time? Right.
Okay.
And so if the business isn't gaining from your time, it's probably not a highest and best use of your time, which is why, Curtis, you hired an assistant, right? Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. And a lot of guys think they got to go out and get this next, star to come help them along their journey. And sometimes they give ownership away and they become partners with people. Wrong decision. Sometimes it's just an assistant to get you out of the
paperwork, out of the, stuff that's minimum wage stuff.
Yeah.
I had a mentor say, what is it? I can't think of his name. He has a company called, God, I'm going blank. But anyway, Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh says, listen, if you want to make $1 million, he said that's $500 an hour work. And anything you touch that's not worth $500 an hour, if you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant. And you need to drop that and then focus on, like, it's probably, for most of y'all listening, if you're in business, there's probably like 2 or 3 things only that you should be doing, and you should outsource everything else. I had a mistake. I went to a networking event the other night, and it was like, I thought it was something else. I was like, I'm gonna get out, and it was on marketing, but it wasn't on marketing. It was a bunch of eggheads, and I say that affectionately, talking about data, website data, and all this technical stuff. So I got the numbers, but I was like, all right. I was thinking, I was like, I'm tired. I don't even feel like talking about it because I don't know how to start a conversation. But it was, I said, this is great, but this is A, over my head, and B, below my pay grade, right? Because I don't need to do this. I've got, my assistant does this. All right, here's our database. How many I just want to know how many leads did we get? How many conversions did we get? All this other technical stuff. I don't need to know that. It's who, not how, right? Yeah. And I think that we want to how, and waste a lot of time in the how, because I'm a technical person. I'm a nerd. I like to know how stuff works. But I says, nope, let it go. I don't need to know who's my who.
Yep. And it's just, and it's so funny. And I love the book Who Not How. I think it's mislabeled. I think it needs to be who then how. Because I think the how still matters, right? Like in Rise, the who is in resources, the how is in systems, right? So, but like we all need the how at some point to let go without losing control, but like not in the beginning, right? We need to know who is going to help us right now. And so that's what we're looking for in resources is time, money, and people. Where do we spend our time, right? How much money do we need to make, and how much money do we need to spend, and how much money are we going to profit? And then last is, right, like what people do we need? And so the money part of this equation, though, is probably the most crucial. It's one of the reasons why I don't love some of the other business operating systems out there, and some of them are really well known, is because they don't bring finances into the beginning stages of business really for an entrepreneur. And so, Curtis, when somebody looks at their company structure and they see all these seats, right? Marketing, sales, operations, finance, administrative assistant, the business unit leader, and all these different seats. And there's 4 major positions. There's, the innovator, the visionary, there's the leader of the organization, there's the managers in the organization, there's employees. And you look at all those seats and you say, well, I'm a brand new company, but your company still has those seats. You still have sales, you still have marketing, you still have operations, you still have finance. They may be 1 hour a week right now. They may be 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week individually, but they all still make up a full week for you. Right. But the truth is when you look at that and you decide, okay, I'm in all these seats, first thing is, which seat should you not be in?
Yes.
Right. That's where you look at, like, if this doesn't make me $500 an hour, should I hire a assistant? But here's the thing. There are going to be seats that you still decide to sit in that make the company $500 an hour. And here's where I see a lot of entrepreneurs make a mistake is they don't pay themselves for every seat they sit in.
Yes.
And they don't create a budget for the company that says this seat, based on salary.com, I would have to hire someone to do at $40,000 a year, which is $20 an hour, which means I've got to pay myself because I work 5 hours a week in this seat. $20 times 5, right, is what we need a budget for that seat. Because as the company grows, the budget will then grow for the seat. And then when you hit 40 hours a week and you're forced out of that seat and you have to hire someone, and usually it's around 20 hours a week, and you're like, this is too much, I've got to get help in it. You now have a budget to hire them with.
Right. The money's there to hand it off. Right. Right.
Whether you take the money or not, or you let it go back in the company, I still want it in a budget so that you know what the true margins of the business.
See, I teach people to take the money, right? Like I think that you've got to you got to take profits off the top, right? And then you have to pay yourself. Like one of the things that I do, Gary, this is so awesome that you say this, because one of the things that I'll do, because I teach people how to map, we call it cash flow mapping. So I try to teach people to look forward and not at history. I look at history, but I wanted you to tell your money where to go instead of asking where it went. But one of the things I try to help people do is separate church and state, right? Business and your personal finances. And then what I don't think people do on the money side, because I always tell people your financial plan precedes the business plan, right? So you know what you want the business to do for you to create the life that you want, which is the purpose of the business, right? And so what does your life cost? So does it take $5,000 a month for you to pay your mortgage, run your bills? So that's what the business has to pay you. So you can't, because so what do you tell people that says, well, I'm just bootstrapping right now and I can't pay myself? That's, because if you leave it in the business, I was told, I got this from Mike McAllowitz, if you leave it in the operating account, the business will eat up all the money you give it. And so if you're stuck there, like, because if you can't pay yourself, that's your business talking to you, and you have a marketing and sales problem because you're not generating enough money. Like, how do you, so to me, that takes you back into the KPIs.
It does. And so you're saying it exactly the right way, right? Like, you have to, 1, decide your lifestyle and what you can pay yourself. Then 2, the business has to support that. That's where the profits come into play, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, you have to know what is making up your salary. Is it 5 hours a week in marketing? Is it 10 hours a week in sales? You got to know where your $5,000 a month is coming from the business. So as the business grows and that budget increases, you can then decide, because now it's your decision, which seat do I want to step out of? Right? And once you have that, you have now freedom. You're making the decision how to get your time back. But if you don't recognize a budget in your business and know where the money's coming from, you're 1, never going to take it. 2, you're going to put money back in the company that you may never see again. 3, what's going to happen here is at the end of the day, you're going to get stuck and people are going to stay grinding too long. And more importantly, when you don't budget properly, you don't know what your true margins are.
Right.
And so when somebody goes to scale, here, Curtis, I don't want to scale a 10% margin business.
Right. There's no money there. It's like, and nobody wants that business. Again, you own a job.
You do. And so what happens a lot of times is entrepreneurs will sit in all the seats in their company, right? They look at the company, they don't take the money, or they take a minimum amount for every seat. And then they look at it and they go, this company's a 60% margin business. I'm like, no, it's not. Because as soon as you're forced out of all those seats and you have to force to hire people, guess what happens? Your profit margin.
Right.
It drops.
Right.
And you go to what's really reality, what it should have always been if you were taking the money and budgeting for each seat and really realizing what the margins of this company are at scale.
When do they, in your mind, should they start thinking? Like in my mind, I'm envisioning a yellow pad with I'm a visual person, so I'm gonna draw it out. The business, this position, this position, this position, and time, right? And then what it's worth. Like, when should they start thinking about what we're talking about right now in terms of building that structure?
It's actually the first thing I do.
I love that.
When somebody is already making profits, right? Like they've started this, went from a hobby to like, okay, we're going to make this a business. As soon as that decision's made that this is going to be a business, we need to structure out what the seats look like.
I love that. And so what are the, like what you described there, what are the most common misconceptions that people have with business systems and processes, and how do you kind of help them overcome that?
Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that, well, if I put this in place, I can walk away. And so they let go too soon, right? And then, well, I hired you, like I gave you a process. Why aren't you doing it? Well, because people still need mentored, right? They don't always have, we don't have the appropriate training. So we got to let go without losing control.
Right.
I don't think I'd be safe. I fly about 5 times a week. I don't think I'd feel very safe if the pilot, which I know they use autopilot, if they put it on autopilot and we're walking around the cabin talking to everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Right? But like you put it on autopilot, it's good. No, you better get up there and watch this thing.
You just sit there and watch for birds or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing is, most entrepreneurs, when they start hiring people and put systems in and processes and KPIs and meeting structure and all that, they think that like CEO seat is a beach seat. It ain't. It's very much a seat in the business. It works more on the business than in it, but it's still a resource to the company.
Because like a plane, it's off course most of the time, right? So you still have to make constant adjustments to, to calibrate, make sure your navigation is not flying you into a mountain or something.
Yeah. And I mean, there's actually this movie about these guys. It's called Alive, right? It's about a rugby football team.
Seen that.
And they like hit the top of a mountain because the pilots weren't really paying attention to what was going on. And so I always tell people, when you get away from your cockpit and you walk away from all the KPIs and the structure and everything you put in place, and you don't keep your eye on it, then you're an autopilot to land, and you ain't going to like that landing.
Right.
You ain't going to hit a runway. Or you could be like the Titanic. You know what happened to the Titanic, right? It hit an iceberg and, killed so many people. Do you know where the captain of that ship was when that ship hit the iceberg?
No.
He was counting dinner plates.
I didn't know that. That wasn't in the movie.
Right? No, he was known for everything about his ship. He was like on time. He knew when the music was starts to play, how much dinner plates it had, where people were supposed to be. He knew everything about his ship. And he was so far entrenched in it that he wasn't watching where the ship was going. And so entrepreneurs will create systems and stuff, and 2 types. One will live so much in it, they don't watch where it's going. The other one will put it on autopilot and walk away, and it still crashes. And so we have to be diligent. We have to be good stewards of the company we started and God empowered us to lead. Right. And being a CEO of a company is you have to have your eyes on the numbers. And I always tell people, like, if you want to make sure your company is running properly, The key is metrics. Numbers don't lie. People do.
Right.
And so I met with a client just yesterday in Seattle, and we're talking about the first quarter coming to an end, and they're struggling a little bit with hitting their metrics. And I looked at January, they hit their numbers. February hit their numbers. March, they didn't hit their numbers. And I'm like, all right, well, let's walk through this real estate company. I said, how many leads you get? Boom. They told me 100. All right. How many qualified leads you get? Of your qualified leads, how many appointments did you go on? Of your appointments, how many offers did you make? Of your offers, how many signed contracts did you get? Of your signed contracts, how many did you close? And that's the backbone of their business. That's their KPIs. And you know what? I could see the black hole was really apparent. And it was from the time they went on their appointment to the time they got contracts, their closing or their contract percentage fell off the ground. It was terrible. It went from 2 months, the previous 2 months, to being pretty high to nothing. And it got me thinking here, did someone stop putting the work in?
Right.
Sure enough.
You might see it the next day, but you'll see, that gap, because thing happened to me. I've been looking at that, and most people don't. I'll train people in sales that don't. They resist accountability because they don't want to report. But you should be accountable to yourself, because the numbers are the number. If you're coaching somebody, it's very scientific. So it's not this catch can thing people think. Yeah. If you're breaking it down and where you're looking at it, it jumps out as you. Bam. If you care to look at it.
Yeah, 100%. Curtis, it's funny. I went into my doctor right before I started losing weight, and that's one of the reasons I started losing weight. And he says, "Hey, you're pre-diabetic." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, you're gonna have to get sugar down." So he put a little device on me, and and I went about my day and started watching my numbers. And it was interesting to me. I knew I wasn't eating right, but I felt like I was eating better.
Right.
So I go back to the doctor in 90 days. He's like, "Hey, how you been? How you been doing with your sugar?" I'm like, "Man, I'm doing good. I bet you it's so much better." He's like, "All right, well, let's look at your blood work. You got your blood work done the other day before you came in the office?" I said, "Yeah, I should be back by now." He pulls up my blood work. He looks at me and just gives me one of those looks. He's like, "Stop lying." And I'm like, "What?" He says, "Your A1C is 7.1. You better stop lying."
Yourself and to me, right? So,
and he's like, "Your numbers don't lie."
Right.
And I'm like, "All right." He's like, "You need to take this serious."
Yes, that is so huge. Let me ask you this. What trends and challenges do you see in the entrepreneur world? Or if you want to continue on the KPI, those numbers are fascinating, because I think people do that. But what are that you see coming down the pike, economically, the stuff you see as you work with your entrepreneur clients? What are they missing? Where's their blind spot?
They're missing it right now. I will tell you, I think this is just a prediction. I probably completely wrong. Might not age well, but I think our workforce will reduce by 10% in the next 5 years. I think it'll be the first time. Most people talk about technology and how it creates more jobs and all that, but AI is evolving so fast that I think and people are implementing it so fast right now that I think it's eliminating people faster than we are developing the people to build AI. And so I think there's going to be a reduction and then a resurgent. I think after that, people will start training in AI. They'll get more jobs in AI, but the learning curve of AI is going to be so short to get there. It's revolving so fast that people aren't learning it fast enough to know how to build it, implement it, and grow. And I think it's going to reduce for a while before it brings back more jobs. Or actually, I think in the long term, it'll bring more jobs. But because of the speed of which AI is developing and being used in businesses today, I think businesses are going to miss out on it. I think it's a big thing, because if we're not using it properly, we're not going to be able to leverage it into our businesses. And therefore we're going to be too costly. Our costs for resources are going to continue to either stay where they are, grow, and other companies are going to get more efficient. And when they get more efficient, their costs are going to go down. And when their costs go down, they're going to allow that cost to hopefully come back to the consumer. But more importantly, people are going to make decisions based on that cost. And they're going to like, hey, I can get the same product or even better over here because this guy's using technology or AI. And so I think right now I'm seeing it around the board. I have clients that are bringing on full-time AI developers In Rise, we have an AI, right? It's called Rise AI. And you can go in there. It uses all my books and all my technology and all my videos. And you could go in there and you could ask it questions with prompts, and it'll help you build your whole business framework with the AI just for my book. So like we're coming out with a synthetic influencer called Coach Gary that'll sit on your desktop. You can ask it questions, and you can literally have Gary, the coach, powered by my knowledge in AI, and have that sitting right on your desktop to help you answer questions for your business, And so like, that's the type of thing we're talking about. And so people have got to get on board with AI and what it's going to, because I think the efficiencies that it's going to drive in a business are going to be, hard to compete against.
I think so. I think they're missing that. You can't fight technology. You got to, how would they, let's embrace it. So they need to embrace it. Should you be doing, reading to kind of get yourself in the wave, ahead of the wave, but let's say at least paddling, the wave is coming, you just start paddling, to use the surfing analogy.
Right. But I think people get overwhelmed with change. They get overwhelmed with something new, and they create it as this big monster. They create it as this big elusive thing. And the confused mind just says no, right? That's what happens, right? When you confuse, you lose. And sometimes we confuse ourselves, and that's what causes us to lose. But when I talk to entrepreneurs, my goal is to keep it super simple and just like, what's our 0 to 1? Right? Like you can look at everything we're talking about, what the world's doing, and say, well, that's a 10, man. I can't get to a 10. But I don't want you to get to a 10. I want you to get to 1 right now. And so like what's beautiful about AI is it's information.
Right.
So it's the most ultimate key to unlocking all information is what AI does for us. So like here's a beautiful thing. Go to ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT.com, and just type in this. I own this business. Please teach me how I can use AI and learn AI to help drive more efficiency in my business. Let AI be your teacher. That's your 0 to 1. Whatever fear you have right now about where it's going and what you're doing, just go ask AI to overcome it for you, to give you the knowledge. Because the reason people don't look and take steps forward, I always say there's 4 reasons why we don't scale. First, 1 is fear. That's fear. Number 2 is mindset. We're not willing to have an open mind to something. Number 3 is not having the right connections, which is why your podcast is so important. It makes connections for people. Right. And then last, systems and processes, right? We have to have a system or process. We all do, right? The way I got up and showered this morning, there was a system or process to it. Right. We all do it the same way. We get in routines. But let's go back to the very first one, which just goes back to AI here, the fear. People are scared of what they don't know. So how do we get rid of fear? The Bible says 365 times, do not fear. Why? Because the Bible is knowledge. And that's how we get rid of fear. We replace fear with knowledge. So if you're scared today of an AI, you're scared today of like, this is insurmountable, this is too much, go 0 to 1. Go get on chatgpt.com and type in, I'm scared of AI. What do I need to do to overcome the fear of it? What is AI? How do I use AI? How can I learn what AI is? How can I implement AI in my business? It's all it is information. It's basically the internet on steroids right now. That's what it is today. Yeah. But that's your 0 to 1, because fear replaced by knowledge, then you have to have faith. Faith is sustaining of the knowledge. And so as an entrepreneur, we have a lot of fears. And that's the beautiful thing about AI is it helps us get more knowledge, which causes us to overcome our fear. I went to the doctor. I go every 90 days to get my blood work done. And I went not too long ago, and something was off, and they said, well, let's go get a CAT scan. And I got a CAT scan, and I said, well, I don't like that. Let's go get an MRI. So I went and got an MRI, and they said, well, you have a 3-pound mass on your left kidney. I was like, well, that ain't good. You go to your doctor's office, Curtis, and he says mass, and then he says stat, right? And then he says, let's pray. Right. I'm telling you, bro, it's not a good 3 combination of words. Right. Mass, stat, and pray are not words you want to hear coming out of your doctor's office.
Exactly.
Mouth, right? And so I was scared. I was pretty scared. So I go get this other test done. I had to get another MRI with contrast. And I get notified in my chart of my blood results and the test results before my doctor calls me. So you know what I did? I downloaded the report. You think I'm certified in reading all these over under numbers and what's good and what's not and what's this and what's that? And I'm not good at that. So you know what I did? I copied it out. I went to ChatGPT. I put it in. I said, just got this MRI done. This is my doctor said this was the problem. Here's the results. Can you explain it to me? And would you believe it came back with this is benign, it's not cancerous, it's this, it's probably filled with fluid. Your doctor is going to recommend one of three things. It's going to recommend this thing, or this thing. And would you believe when my doctor called me, I swear to you, he was reading that ChatGPT.
Wow.
I mean, he may have been, right? Like he
right.
what I did, but
I mean, that's powerful. And then I would say, I would do that. And I would say, look, tell it to me on a third grade reading level.
That's what I did. I'm like, I still don't know what stat means. I still don't know what benign means.
Right.
Can you explain this to me as if I have no medical informational knowledge? And it broke it down. I mean, it broke it down really simple for me. And you know what? The anxiety was gone. What went away? Fear. Why? Because I got knowledge.
Yeah. It's funny because Dan Sullivan calls it, most people are hitting what I call a ceiling of complexity, right? And so their ceiling's low. And so even as in the financial world, what I try to do with clients, I don't give investment advice. What I try to do is see myself, I'm an educator who implements, right? So what we want to do is, if I can raise your ceiling through education, as your knowledge goes up, your anxiety comes down, right? Because you now have information that you can apply more than the 2 ways you knew. Here's another 6 ways you could solve this problem. And now, okay, I could do this, or this. Yes. And so what I see is ChatGPT is a good, initially just a brainstorm, especially if you read a lot, right? I would say, look, hey, are you familiar with this book? Yes. And so I've used enough, it's familiar with me. Yes. Would you like to use this to integrate into what you're doing?
Right.
Yes. How would I do that? It's fascinating, just so you don't start from a blank page.
Exactly. No, it's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for a 0 to 1 approach as an entrepreneur, not a 0 to 10. We don't need to create the complexity that creates fear, that causes us not to act.
Yeah.
So 0 to 1, just go get familiar. And if you've never done it before, type it in chatgpt.com and then just say, hey, what is AI? Right. Then second question, how can I use AI in my life? How can I use AI in my business? And you're going to see it, bro. Like it'll just come alive to you and you'll say, man, I can ask this any question. My daughter is 26 years old and she's like, she shared something with the other day. I'm like, where'd you learn that? She's like, I have conversations with AI throughout the day. She like literally has conversations with it.
I do that. If I'm bored, I will on my phone. I don't set it up so I don't want to hear a voice, right? But I will talk into it. And then it'll go back and forth, and I might have solved. All right, here's a seminar I'm working on. Here's this. Here's that.
Yeah. Why not?
I was sitting in a funeral, but they were waiting for like the brother to come, so they were late. So I was like, all right, well, I'm sitting here. Let me just have a conversation and work this thing out. I didn't really know the person. Well, my wife asked me to come, but
you could have been like, hey, since he's not coming. Hey, chat, teach me what the order of a service for a funeral is and what I should say, right? Like it'll build it all out for you.
Let me tell you, or write this letter for me, whatever, I want to say this. And yeah, it's brilliant. So I think that is a big, listen, Gary, I could talk to you all day. Tell them, Ashley, about the book, about your program and how they can get the book, follow what you're doing or reach out to you. If they and who you think you're best suited to help, that should be calling you to kind of get themselves on top of the horse, so to speak.
Yeah, I think once you've gotten past the passion, the product, and the profits, and you're making money, and you're like, man, I really want my time back, right? Like I want to get my time back. If you're self-employed or you're trying to become a full-time business owner, or maybe you're a business owner already, but you're just struggling to let go, you're trying to get to that next level, you're trying to expand. That's usually the clientele that we're working with, all the way up to, to a corporation. The way you reach us is at risebusinessframework.com. You can also go to garyharper.com. And on there, you'll be able to have a chance to follow me on all my social. I'm obviously on every social platform that's out there, from YouTube to Instagram and even TikTok and things like that, Facebook. But you can follow us there. I think the way in which to get the information and knowledge on the books that we have, and I have a couple of different Rise books. We have the Rise Business Framework is on Amazon. It's also on Audible. So if you'd rather listen than read, that's the best way for you. Then there's that. We also have a Purpose to Rise. A Purpose to Rise is a fable. It talks about a real estate entrepreneur that scales his business on the Rise Business Framework. And then my fun book right there behind me right there, that is the Penny the Purposeful Panda. And it's about helping children find their purpose. And so that's all a part of that Rise book collage that we have going on. We have more to come as well. But those are where you find them. The Rise Business Framework and the Purpose to Rise, the fable, are both on Audible. And so you could go there and listen, or you could download them on Amazon.
So guys, if you want to get your life back, build a solid business, when you finish, you need to go to Amazon and get this book. If you like to listen, I would get both, right? Because you want to listen and then you want to get, because if you get the book, you can take notes, write in it, and learn what you can learn. And then if you feel you want to reach out to them, now you have better questions, right? Because you've thought about it and you might try something. See, because if you try something and it works, like, wow, I need to work with them because I made this little bit of profit just reading their content. What if I actually, hired them to put this framework in my life? Could I have a better life? Could I have money and time to be with my family, which is ultimately your goal?
Absolutely. 100%. Curtis, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to fulfill my purpose. As I stated earlier, I promised God I'd give my life back to helping others if he gave it back to me, and you've helped me do that today. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. I appreciate that. Guys, go out there, take action. We'll put all the stuff in the show notes and go get the book. And Gary, thanks again. And y'all go out there and make it a profitable day. You know your money's going every month. Most people don't. And that's costing you big time. At Practical Wealth, we help you take control of your cash flow with a simple mapping system. We call it telling your money where to go instead of asking where it went. It's a simple system that shows you exactly how to track, manage, redirect dollars towards building wealth, paying down debt, finding hidden money, and having a clear plan to achieve your financial goals. With cash flow mapping, you're in charge, not the other way around. Ready to get started? Visit practicalwealthsolutions.com or go to the link below. Learn how the cash flow mapping can transform your finances.